Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to my little home office cubby that I have here in the great state of Wisconsin. Today's video, we're going to be discussing one of the character traits or virtuous traits, which Aristotle proposes as being habitual for the good life. Aristotle looks at a number of these virtues within the Nicomachean Ethics, and he gives examples of each one of them. And attempts to make arguments to make a case that an understanding of each of these virtues in question will lead to the good life. Although he does, one thing I had a question regarding was he does seem to take it for granted that these are the virtues that we should be cultivating. It doesn't seem to me that he leaves any doubt in the reader's mind that these are the virtues that he is prescribing. And I wonder if others and others have made arguments for other virtues that may be added to this as well. Today, what I want to just briefly take a look at is what Aristotle considers the cardinal virtue, and that is courage. Courage, is considered by Aristotle the first and primary virtue, primarily because without courage, none of the other virtues are possible. It requires courage, in a sense, to go along this path of virtuous living and moral and upright and ethical thinking. And courage is required along each step of the way. Now, courage, as the Greeks would define it, was the Greek term andria, or manliness. Given a patriarchal society, it's not uncommon that would be the case. And one wonders what Aristotle's concept of women, and if women would be considered within his definition of courage or manliness. And like all of Aristotle's virtues, courage is a mean along a spectrum between the two extreme points, with the extremes, of course, to be avoided, because these are the extremes of excess on one end and deficiency on another. So on the line of courage, with courage as the mean, what we're looking at is boldness, or as the Greeks would call it, thrasos, as the excess. And it's boldness in itself can be good, but when it's boldness that goes beyond thinking, when an individual reacts or acts without thought and rational consideration, this is rashness, or thrasis, as the Greeks would say. So that's the one end of the spectrum. On the other end, of course, is fear, or phobos, being the deficiency end of that spectrum. And this would be, delios, or the coward, along the deficiency line. So courage falls right in between the middle there, probably along the lines of bravery, or as the Greeks said, manliness, or daring, if you want to call it that. So within the Nicomachean Ethics and along the lines of courage, Aristotle does make the case that we should all fear bad things, and fears the expectation of bad things, but it's not good enough to call a fearless man a courageous man. The quote that came to me that I reminded, as far as Aristotle's definition of courage, is that the courage, as he says, the courageous man withstands and fears those things which it is necessary to fear and withstand, and on account of the right reason, and how and when it is necessary to fear or withstand them, and likewise in the case of being bold. Okay? So the man of courage acts courageously in a qualified manner, or in a qualified way. He does it at the right time, in the right manner, in the right motivation, the right place, with the right actions. And this would be something that would be habituated over time, of course, and it would also fall within Aristotle's concept of temperance, prudence, and wisdom. That is, over time, when these traits develop, the concept of courage and when to act and how to act and where to act becomes more common, becomes better known. So the courageous man not only acts, but the courageous man also knows when not to act and knows how to act, and so on. He goes on to talk a little bit about that those who fear being poor, as they waste their money, they're not considered courageous. And those who commit suicide to escape things are actually behaving cowardly. Because the courageous man is both fearful and bold in a sense. Courage mixes those traits. And as I said, these things are done in the right time, in the right manner, and for the right reason. Okay? Courageous acts, then, are conducted with an eye on the correct purpose. What's the ends? To what are these means being placed as courage, and what ends are they looking for? Or what Aristotle would often refer to as the final cause. How does this idea of courage fit within the actualization of the soul and the actualization of the person beyond form? The purpose for which courageous acts are done is noble, kalon, excuse me, in the Greek. So the courageous man withstands and does what he does in accordance with courage. And pardon me, I'm just looking at my notes over here on the side. And one of the examples that Aristotle uses most, of course, is a soldier in battle. He sees that as a good example of courage. So, I mean, why does he do this? Because one of the things we fear most is death. Death is the most frightening. And death of war, death for your country, death defending one's family, death defending one's home, was considered by many of the ancient classical civilizations as one of the finest acts. And courage for the Greeks and for Aristotle is shown best in situations in which there is a fight, which there is a struggle, and in which fear can take a place. Spartan civilization in ancient Greece, while they're not normally considered great thinkers, the Spartans, since they were mostly a warlike society, they spent many, many hours and years studying just the concept of fear and how man becomes frightened and how man overcomes it. And courage would be fitting in along with that as well. And as Aristotle says, we publicly honor those men who die in battle or successfully overcome an enemy. And this is proof that this is one of the highest types of honor, one of the highest types of virtue is courage. Okay. And as I said, courage has a lot to do with fear and fearful things, much more so than being bold. It involves both, but it does involve fear. And what Aristotle really means about this is that we praise the courageous individual because he can withstand pain. It could be considered courageous that one restrains himself from pleasure, but the first overcoming or facing of fear and pain is considered the more difficult of the two. So it's not that a man sacrifices or shows courage by abstaining from certain things, certain pleasures of life, which could be considered courageous in a sense, but it's more so that the courageous man overcomes, that he puts aside his fears and is able to do what needs to be done for himself, for his family, and for the community at large. Okay, I hope that made sense. I've had a long time putting these things together in and amongst the midterm exam, but I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great week. Grüß Gott.